Hey everyone, it's Dr. Cody. I'm a US Navy trained and board certified psychiatrist. I've been doing hundreds of QEEG brain maps with my clients in my human performance optimization programs. And I think it's time to go through all these metrics on these Myndlift reports, measurements like alpha recovery, peak alpha, and theta beta ratios, along with the visually striking and information rich brain maps to show you what exactly I'm looking at when I work with people to improve their brain performance by analyzing where they're at and giving them custom brain performance protocols to follow in their daily lives. Today, I'm going to show you what these advanced brain scan metrics actually mean, what I personally as a brain health coach look to optimize for people, and how we can actually go about to improve these metrics to lead to real world brain performance improvement by optimizing things like sleep, meditation, red light therapy, supplements, and lifestyle changes. And be sure to stick to the end of this video because after I break down all these metrics, I'll walk you through some real life case studies to show how this actually plays out in different types of brains. Now first, let's take a look at these brain maps to see what they actually mean. These are color-coded maps that compare your brain to people that are within 5 years of age of you. We get these maps through a company called Myndlift that has their own software and population data accumulated through using the Muse headband. Myndlift supplies an additional electrode that connects to the sensor module of the Muse headband, and clients measure their brains with it. Myndlift did over 1 million brain scans to accumulate this data and present it in this way. If you look at this standard deviation scale, you see what the different colors mean. You see that the dark blue represents 3 standard deviations below average in terms of amplitude for a given frequency, whereas the dark red is 3 standard deviations above average amplitude. You can see this for each segment of frequencies when it comes to brainwave activity. Now this ranges from blue all the way to red, and green is in the middle, which represents average values. Now here's what I generally look for at a brain that's at rest, which is when you take these brain maps, people are just sitting there with their eyes open or eyes closed. Now, when I take on clients, I have them fill out questionnaires so I understand what their brain performance looks like from day to day. And then through that lens, I take a look at these quantitative EEG measurements to see on what different areas we can improve. Now, generally, and these are overgeneralizations because I need to take into context the client's age and how their brain is performing from day to day, but generally, I do like to see slow waves mostly normalized within the green region. I'm a fan of strong alpha rhythms in the light red region because we see that a lot of meditators actually have higher alpha levels than the general population when they are compared to people of the same age. I like to see low amounts of high beta, especially when they're at rest. When they're taking these brain scans, they're just sitting there at rest with their eyes open and eyes closed. So I don't want to see excess high beta activity because if there's a lot of high beta, especially in the CZ region, it's pretty indicative of mind wandering and worry. So that's enough for now. We'll come back to these brain maps in the case studies at the end of this video, but I want to go through the rest of the Myndlift report to see what other information we can use because these are also very useful metrics to understand brain performance. Now we can see at the top of this report there are numbers for reaction time testing. There's a portion of the Myndlift test that has clients tap an iPad when arrows are pointing a certain way and it tries to distract you and it tries to trick you. So it tests you for speed, accuracy, and gives you error readings that measure impulsivity. Now, I like to do reaction time testing at the beginning and end of my programs to see if there's any long-term improvement from the programs. And as you can imagine, these reaction times might vary from day to day based on how much sleep someone's gotten, if they're stressed, or if they have anything else going on that day that's distracting them. Now let's go on down to these other brain measurements. Now let's take a look at this first metric called alpha response. Now alpha response is measuring a phenomena in neuroscience called alpha blocking. When you go from eyes closed to eyes open, your brain actually suppresses alpha, especially within the first couple of seconds. Now Myndlift has you open and close your eyes several times during certain measurements in order to measure the alpha blocking response. Now generally, the idea is that when you open your eyes and alpha drops, it actually allows your brain to shift from internal awareness to external focus. If you're in the green green here with alpha response, it means that you have good attentional shifting, that in a healthy way, you can disengage from internal thought when needed to pay attention to what's going on outside of you. If you're in the red, it could indicate that you're experiencing a lot of stress and rumination, and you're having a difficult time turning off the internal processing of your brain, which normally is experienced as worry and overthinking. Now, this is one of my favorite metrics because it reflects this real-world ability to switch your attention, which is really important. Now, real quick, I do want to say that if you're getting value from this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button right there on the screen. We can see that over half of you are not subscribed to the channel, and if you want more cutting-edge information about how to improve your brain's performance, please hit subscribe to support the channel. All right, thanks for doing that. It really helps the channel. All right, now let's go to alpha recovery. Another thing that happens when your brain is engaged in a task is that it also suppresses alpha. So it's important that after the task is completed, your brain is able to re-increase alpha when it's at rest. So the question is, how quickly can your brain return to calm alpha dominance? Being in the green here reflects that you have efficient disengagement from tasks when they are complete, that you have strong rest and relax rebound, that you're not always stuck in fight or flight mode. It can correlate with the ability to have mental resilience and have good recovery. And if you're in the red here, it could indicate that your brain has difficulty disengaging from tasks, which causes chronic stress and burnout. I would consider this to be a resilience metric. Now, I will say that after looking at hundreds of brain scans over the last couple of years, I'm much more likely to see abnormalities in alpha response than alpha recovery in a given client. It seems like most people have difficulty getting out of their head and into the current moment rather than disengaging from tasks. It's much more common that people have red in the alpha response, and I've only seen one or two in the red for alpha recovery. Now, going on down the list is a more classic neurofeedback measurement. It's called the theta-beta ratio. This is a more traditional EEG biomarker that has been investigated heavily as a biomarker for ADHD, but it's had difficulty with reproducibility in studies if you're going to use it as a diagnostic marker for diagnosing ADHD. Now, in my opinion, I think that what we call ADHD is sort of a trash can diagnosis where you throw in a bunch of different brain type patterns into a common label and just call it ADHD. Now, that doesn't mean that the theta-beta ratio isn't useful for brain performance training. It just means that if you're going to reliably diagnose someone with ADHD, you can't just use the theta-beta ratio. Really there, we're opening up a whole can of worms that the DSM wasn't based on actual brain data, and it's a real problem. All right, but that's a discussion for another day. Let's get back to the actual biomarkers. Having a high theta-beta ratio could indicate poor focus and distractibility. Having a lower ratio may reflect having a more alert baseline in terms of attention and generally just be better for focus performance. But again, context really matters here, so we're careful not to jump into any conclusions when we see abnormalities in theta-beta ratio. This next metric takes it a step further and is called the theta-beta ratio response. Now, when your brain goes from a resting, relaxed state to an engaged state that requires cognitive demand, like doing mental math, it almost always increases fast brain waves in the beta region. Like Myndlift has this exercise that while it's measuring your brain, it has you start from 100 and subtract 7 over and over again as many times as you can. And in normal brains, theta tends to be suppressed, whereas beta goes up. But especially in the frontal lobes, which is doing the majority of the calculation in these types of exercises, if theta stays elevated, it can correlate with fatigue, poor task management, or ADHD. Now, again, we're not leaping to any conclusions, but we're getting more data on how your brain is performing in the given moment. This is what I would call another modulation metric, like alpha recovery and alpha response. It's how well your brain can shift between different modes on whether it's relaxing or shifting into cognitive demand. This next metric, called beta response while counting, as you can imagine, is associated with the same thing. It's measuring the change in central beta during cognitive engagement. So normally central beta should increase under cognitive demand, and if it doesn't, it can indicate cognitive fatigue or under arousal from a bunch of different causes. But as you can see, it can spike too high, and there it could indicate stress-driven overactivation. They also decided to throw in a theta low beta ratio. Typically this is measured with eyes closed, and you want the ratio to be around 3.0 or less. but higher levels might be associated with difficulty in relaxing. Now, getting on to this next measurement, which has been talked a lot about in different wearable neurotechnology setups, is peak alpha frequency. You can actually find this as a measurement within the regular Muse app. Now, peak alpha frequency is the exact frequency within the 8 to 12 hertz band where your alpha power is highest. A higher peak alpha frequency has been associated with higher processing speed, better memory, better reading comprehension, and what they would call more efficient thalamocortical communication, meaning better communication between distant brain regions that allow your brain to operate efficiently and in a coherent manner. Most often, younger brains have higher peak alpha frequencies. Myndlift actually mapped this out in population metrics, showing that people that tended to be older had lower peak alpha frequencies, and that things like good sleep and meditation could increase your peak alpha frequency, and that peak alpha frequency could be an indicator for brain health longevity. Some of the worst peak alpha measurements that I've seen have been in shift workers and pilots, people that are often changing their sleep awake time and time zones and not getting good sleep. Their peak alpha frequencies are almost always all the way down at the bottom range of 8. One thing that I do like about the Myndlift measurement is that they often use the CZ region, which appears to be a little bit more stable in measuring peak alpha frequency than the regular Muse headband, which is relying on frontal and temporal sensors. But that's all up for debate right now as we accumulate more data in the population that are using the Muse headband anonymously. And this data, of course, is anonymous, but it's really contributing to the democratization of neurotechnology and understanding brain dynamics on a population level. Now let's take a look at some anonymous case studies and then talk about how we might improve these metrics. Now let's look at this first case study. This is someone that had been diagnosed with ADHD by their regular healthcare provider. I did not make the diagnosis, especially not by using these brain scans. We're just taking a look at the quantitative EEG of someone that's already been diagnosed with ADHD. And as you can see, the brainwave amplitudes are pretty striking. There's very significant slow wave activity here, but you'll also notice very low resting alpha levels. We also see in these other metrics a poor alpha response. So this person is having a really difficult time disengaging from internal stimuli and paying attention to what's going on in front of them. You'll also notice that when they flip into concentration, they get a lot of excess beta, and this might be indicative of that tendency to go down rabbit holes when they get distracted. And another thing that we saw for this client was very low peak alpha activity, and I can tell you that this person had a really hard time going to bed on time just because they would get distracted by things and stay up late and not get enough sleep. So this can be interpreted as having an under-rested nervous system, poor network segregation, and a compensatory overactivation during certain tasks. Now, case 2 is an example of something that I often see in high performers that have a lot of worry and overthinking. We see here that there's a large amount of elevated high beta at rest. There's also a poor alpha response, difficulty disengaging from internal stimuli. And overall, when you see a lot of that high beta, there's this chronic cognitive overdrive. They are constantly in fight or flight mode, worrying, ruminating, and have difficulty relaxing into a calm, present attention that would be reflected in stronger alpha levels. Because when you look at case number 3, which is more of a high performance brain scan, this was a long-term meditator, 30 years of transcendental meditation work. And what you see here is a very strong low beta levels, really great theta beta ratio, and strong alpha recovery. So we're seeing a very stable nervous system, but in this client, there was still some room for improvement in alpha response. So we see that even high performers have rooms for improvement when we look at these brain scans, and oftentimes they're excited to see that because they are people that really engage in self-improvement and are always looking for ways to improve. Now, in our programs, we really focus on several key things. We do a lot of meditation training because we know that meditation increases resting alpha. It also improves the alpha response and alpha recovery, which are all telling us that we're strengthening network coherence. You're either on or off. That's how the brain wants to operate. It also reduces high beta over time, which means that we're getting more rest and relax instead of fight or flight. It's just overall an amazing training mechanism for a more healthy brain. We're also using a lot of red light therapy from devices like the V-Light systems, which are my favorite, because we can target different frequencies for the red light to oscillate at, which helps us modulate different networks and improve efficiency. And you're also getting that general red light therapy effect, which is improving ATP production from mitochondria, improving blood flow and lymphatic drainage. Now, when it comes to people that have low peak alpha levels, most often we're looking at sleep optimization. 9 times out of 10, low peak alpha levels tend to be correlated with poor sleep from what I've seen. So we want to go to bed and get up at the same time every day. Don't get too out of whack on the weekends. Limit blue light exposure in the evenings and do things like take magnesium. I'm a big fan of magnesium L-threonate. It has a lot of evidence for improving sleep architecture and promoting more GABA in the system, which helps you be more in rest and relax mode instead of fight or flight. Because in general, if you get better sleep, you're just gonna have overall better neural efficiency no matter what you do. In my programs, we also want to promote exercise, which we know keeps neurons healthy, regulate blood sugar levels, which is critical for reducing inflammation in the brain, and different stress management techniques that allow you to disengage from worry and rumination and be in the present moment and generally feel good through the day. So in general, I'm finding these brain metrics to be extremely helpful in guiding people to give them custom protocols so they can make sure to optimize their brain health for days, months, and years to come. We certainly need more data, but I think that the DSM, the Diagnostic Manual for Psychiatry, needs to be completely rewritten based on biomarkers. Even Dr. Tom Insel, who I interviewed years ago, who is director of the National Institute of Mental Health at NIH, would agree with this. So much work needs to be done, and I'm glad that the technology is getting out there so that we can get more population data to understand what these deviations from the norm are and what a high performance brain actually looks like, so you know what you can do to get a high performance brain. That way you can communicate better, you can make better decisions, you can be there for your family and your loved ones, and you're just more of a capable human being, but it also promotes your own flourishing and happiness. So that being said, if you want to get your own brain metrics and get your own personalized brain optimization plan, we have the Sharper Everyday program, which runs every month, or our 8-week neurotech training program. You can take a look at the links below for more information on those programs. Or if you just want to stick on YouTube and learn more about brain health, meditation, maybe take a look at this video here. It takes a look at brain scans that I made during advanced meditation techniques. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.